Transmitter device activated. Coordinates set for Earth 2.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Earth 2 podcast, your weekly exploration of the origins and development of the DC Comics multiverse and the legacy of their Golden Age characters through the Silver and the Bronze Ages of comics. I'm Peter Watson.
And I'm David Steele. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. We return to the pages of The Brave and the Bold this week. We're doing issue 99, which was published on the 7th of October 1971. Rattling through 1971. Good grief. And once again, this week we're doing a story featuring the Flash, and it's all a bit tenuous. But I think it's less tenuous than the most recent issue of the Flash that we did.
Yeah.
And there are other Flash stories to come, and we can all argue about how tenuous they are. That'll be fun, won't it?
Today's episode is sponsored by the word tenuous.
Yes.
And the number 4.
Listeners, which episode of the podcast that we've done so far have you found the most tenuous?
Write in and let us know.
Write in and let us know. Right. It's our 30th Neil Adams cover. Peter's going to tell you all about it.
We have the Brave and Bold banner at the top on the left-hand side. Instead of the usual DC Comics logo, we're still in that weird phase. We've got Batman with his cape up at his face, and underneath it says DC Brave and the Bold. On the right-hand corner, it says 48 pages, only 25 cents. And underneath the Batman and Flash logos, we have a stunning cover with an extreme close-up. Whoa! Of Batman, and he's not looking too good. The right side of his face looks normal, but the left side of his face looks as if it's metamorphosizing into some hideous creature. In the background, we have the Flash who's looking shocked at this, and the Flash is holding a gun. Now, the growling Batman is saying, "Kill me before the demon in me takes over." And then from the other side of his mouth, the evil side of his mouth, he's saying, "No, he's lying. There is no demon in me." And at the bottom of the cover, there's a banner that says, "The Man Who Murdered the Past, plus the Viking Prince."
Barry and Bruce both look terrific.
Yeah.
But it kind of looks like Barry's just floating in midair, doesn't it?
Yeah, because there's no background at all. It's just this sort of greeny, browny.
It's very basic, that sort of way. I like how the Batman logo is in the Flash's colour scheme.
Yes, that's very nice. Nice little touch there.
A nice combination of red and yellow and black and blue and grey on this cover. It pops, as we like to say. It's very nice, yes. So obviously, as we've said, 48 page, only 25 cents. So this is that period when the regular DC comics are a bit chunky with some other stuff backing them up. But there's nothing desperately Golden Age exciting in this one. Although there is a bit with some giant fish, which is quite scary in the backup story. It's drawn by Joe Kubert.
Nice.
Listeners, feel free to check that out if you so desire. We are going to jump straight into the story just so you can decide for yourselves as quickly as possible just how tenuous it is. We open with, looks like the sun's going down. Batman and Flash logos appear in the first panel. A caption says,
"On a ferry nearing a New England island stands a somber figure."
Very nice rendering in this first panel. We're off to a good start. Batman looking very dynamic. Is he recreating Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet in Titanic?
Preceding it, really, isn't it?
I don't know. Who can say? Timey-wimey. Batman is thinking,
"After all these years, the island again. Had such a strong desire to drive up here from Gotham. Didn't even change the old batsuit."
Do you know what? That's the second consecutive Brave and the Bold story we've done when he's referred in his opening scene to his costume being the old batsuit.
Yeah.
You remember he emerged from the water and it was drip dry. Batman's obviously at a point here in his life where he's been very introspective.
Yes.
There's a caption for panel 2.
"Shortly, before a weathered, long shut-up structure."
It's Batman with very odd ears, it must be said.
Yeah, almost Daredevil-y. They're quite forward set, yeah.
They do improve later on, but the quality varies. Batman is looking at this rather splendid large house, which is at the top of some dunes, has a sort of flight of steps leading up to it. There's a turret, lots of windows, big, massive building. And he's looking at this as the sun continues to retire for the evening. The evening sky is sort of drawing in, and he thinks,
"The Wayne family summer home looks the same, a little older, but then so am I." A gloved hand inserts an old key, turns a well-worn door handle, and...
We're now inside. Batman is casting a long shadow, which is great, showing his silhouette. There's some exaggerated cobwebs draped all over the place. So obviously, no one's used this place for a while. Batman casts his eyes around and he sees...
my old tennis racket and fishing rod. Dad gave them both to me.
And our next panel has a rippling effect. There's obviously a flashback. It's captioned,
"Familiar things that tug at the heart make time ebb like the tide, uncovering the memory of summers past."
Yep, and we're on that same beach. obviously, because we can see the house in the background. There's a gentleman with a green t-shirt and black hair in the foreground. He's fiddling about the fishing rod in the background. A young boy in a black and red hooped t-shirt has a fish on the line and he cries,
"Dad, look!"
His father replies, "Great, Bruce. A nice blue fish, or more precisely, a nice Pomatomus saltatrix." Panel 1 of page 2 is captioned,
Memory. That magic trip anyone can take inside his head, as Batman alias Bruce Wayne is doing now.
and it's another ripple panel. We can see Bruce and his dad playing tennis. Martha standing in the background, clapping and applauding. Bit of competitive dad going on. Martha says,
"Beautiful, Bruce. Next year, Thomas, he'll be beating you."
Return to the present in panel 2. No more rippling of the panel edges. A caption says,
The recall of the golden hours of summers long gone ends with the wind whipping a loose shutter.
Yeah, there's a whoop and a whack sound effect as the window shutter bangs against the window. We can see Batman in the foreground holding a tennis racket. There's a large painting portrait on the wall behind him. Batman is thinking,
Dad, Mom, dead so long now, but this house holds so many memories of them. Now, as a sudden summer squall shakes the old house, and the June grasses sigh like souls in torment.
Batman has reached forward and moved the portrait on the wall to the side, revealing a sort of safe underneath, it looks like. And inside this safe, there's an urn, a green urn with a sort of yellow flash on it that reads,
Mortal remains of Thomas and Martha Wayne.
Gosh. Caption for the next panel.
Then, above the drumming of the rain, the lashing of the sea against the cliffs, another sound, a strong man stifling a sob.
Yes, Batman has one hand to his forehead as he holds the urn. It looks massive, actually. And he reads it, obviously, and he's thinking,
Dad, Mom, all that's left of them, their ashes.
And the caption for panel 5.
And as the wind howls in dirge-like fury, as if to tear the sad old house down,
The front door blows open. Lots of wind and rain coming in. Batman moves forward, thinking,
quite a blow, got to close the door.
Then the caption for the final panel.
But as the Batman grasps the knob, a shudder shakes his every inch, and, with a strange stiff-legged gait, he suddenly lurches out into the storm.
Absolute filth. Yes, Batman walking almost zombie-like away from the old Wayne summer house across the beach. Gosh, very scary. We now arrive at page 3. Large panel, takes up most of the page. It's captioned,
Now let us follow this familiar but oddly behaving figure. Let us follow the masked manhunter as he launches forth upon a bizarre and terrifying destiny, as he becomes the man who murdered the past.
Yes, we see Batman's zombie-like figure lurching down towards the harbour. We can see some boats moored. There's an open window, suggesting maybe a pub or something. 2 voices come from within, but before that, a tiny caption tells us,
Art, Bob Brown, Nick Cardy. Story, Bob Haney.
Yep, there's stomps and clump sound effects to emphasise Batman's sort of staggering gait. From inside the building, the first voice says,
Real sou'wester blowing, Mr. Ebbs. Old Manuel, the Portuguese, died in such a storm 50 years ago.
Captain Josiah, what that coming? Glory be! Old Manuel's ghost! It's clear they must be looking outside and seeing Batman coming towards them. We're inside in panel 2, as we see that the 2 men were talking. One is basically a kind of caricature of an old sea dog.
Yes.
Rare cap, thick white hair, thick moustache, he's smoking a pipe, sat in the rocking chair. Kind of looks, even from this angle, like Noel Gallagher from off of Oasis, to my eyes. And the bartender has slight back brown hair, is wearing an apron over his shirt, and has little glasses, as much as... It looks actually like very much like David Graham in the Doctor Who story, The Gunfighters, if you have that reference point.
There we are.
Anyway, so, Captain Josiah is obviously the guy with the pipe and the hat, and he says,
"'Tis no ghost, Abner, but Batman. He rented the old Wayne house."
Batman slams a fist down on the counter and says,
"Ho, amigo, some rum. My thirst, she is great."
Panel 3, Abner has a thought bubble as he contemplates, But that stiff-legged walk, like old Manuel's wooden leg, and his voice and accent, the same? And then he says out loud, we've only soda here, Batman. First panel of page 4 is captioned,
At the mention of his name, the visitor shudders and...
Yeah, Batman rubs his forehead and says,
Huh?
Abner says, You're making a joke? Say, that was a pretty good imitation of old Manuel, the Portuguese harpooner. Gave me a scare. Batman approaches the door in panel 2, saying,
Manuel, my friend Bruce Wayne told me about him. Well, I was just taking shelter from the storm. Must go now.
In panel 3, he's left the building. We can see the silhouettes of the Captain and Abner watching him go. A full moon looms in the background.
Take a drink.
Clouds scudding in front of it as Batman, with a serious face, thinks,
Storm's over, but how'd I get here? And why was I imitating old Manuel? I need sleep. Coming back here has unnerved me.
And so, the caption for panel 4.
But back at the isolated house, it is a fitful, restless sleep that comes to Bruce Batman Wayne.
Yes, and obviously Bruce has woken up suddenly in this panel. It's a bit of a narrative leap, to be honest. We can see the Batman costume draped in the chair beside his bed. He wakes up, and there appear to be 2 ghostly figures standing at the foot of his bed. Bruce cries,
Dad! Mother!
In the final panel, we can see that he appears to be wearing either his pyjamas or his boxer shorts, but they have black and orange stripes.
Again.
Is everyone just wearing their pyjama jackets with a tie?
I think so.
Other stories.
This seems to be the fashion choice of 1971.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, black and orange stripes on everything.
Yeah.
At least for the wealthy.
Yeah. Bruce looks very buff as he crosses to the window and thinks,
What a dream. I could swear my parents were here, in this very room. Impossible, of course, but this house is so full of their spirits.
We arrive at the top of page 5.
The following day, as a sparkling sun seems to dispel the night's dark confusion.
And we see that Batman has headed back into town. Standing in front of him, as he casts a long Batman shadow, are Captain Josiah, Abner, and obviously a member of local law enforcement. Captain Josiah says,
Here he comes. Looks normal enough.
Abner says, Aye, Captain Josiah, but he didn't yesterday. Keep an eye on him, Constable Todd. That's obviously the local enforcement guy. We should point out as well that there's a statue in the foreground of looks like a bronze statue of a fisherman type guy standing in a small boat, bearing a very long harpoon. This becomes relevant in panel 2, which is captioned,
But as the Caped Crusader passes a monument to the town's wailing past...
Off camera, someone cries,
Look at him stomping like he's got a wooden leg again.
He's seizing the monument harpoon. Yes, Batman has indeed seized the monument harpoon. He's grabbed it and he's hurled it, well, very helpfully. Captain Josiah explains.
Glory! Nobody ever tossed a whaling iron like that, except an old Manuel the Portuguese.
Yeah, with a whiz and a thunk, the monument harpoon has struck the sign that obviously hangs out at the Abner's establishment, which we now see was called the Whale Inn.
Mm-hmm.
Then in panel 4, some other members of the local town have assembled to watch Batman stomping off again. The captain says,
I tell you, Constable, the man's possessed.
And someone else says,
Sure is.
And then another figure points towards Batman and says, Old Manuel was a devil. Now he's come back to possess this Batman fella. And local Constable Todd pipes up with,
I better follow him.
And he does. We can also see in the background there a shop called Boating Supplies, so that's quite handy. Final panel, page 5. Very tranquil scene, actually. We can see a few boats out in the sea. Nice pink and grey sky. There's a caption.
Soon atop sea-sculptured cliffs beyond the village.
Yep, Constable Todd has his vehicle, looks like a bit of a jeep, and he's parked it up outside a tall structure. You can see Batman going into a door at the base of the structure as Constable Todd thinks.
He's entering the abandoned lighthouse. Been broken for years and off limits to trespassers.
Yes, we can see a sign indeed that says US government property, keep out. Now we arrive at the top of page 6.
Shortly atop the towering structure.
Yep, we see Batman interfering with the lamp. Constable Todd arrives and says,
All right, just what are you up to?
Bats replies,
Oh, you bother Manuel.
And then the caption for panel 2.
A sudden leap. A powerful fist lashes out.
We see Batman punching out Constable Todd with a sock sound effect, but Batman suddenly seems to come to his senses. He looks appalled as he thinks,
Huh? Where am I? What did I do?
And a slow dissolve.
Not long after...
Batman's in court. See the judge stood in front of him. Batman's still there in full costume. The judge is saying, Assault on an officer of the law is a serious charge. I must jail you unless you put up bail.
Your Honour, I've no money with me.
And Constable Todd, who's there, whirls around as a voice from off camera says, I'll go the Batman's bail. Batman whirls around to the next panel and reacts, saying,
Barry Allen, what in the world are you doing here?
And we see the familiar face who replies, I'd say the question is, what is Batman doing in court?
Can this startling reunion of Batman and the man who is secretly the Flash be strictly chance? Shortly, as the 2 Justice League comrades leave...
Yes, we see them walking down the steps of the district court. Batman is saying,
So it appears I've twice been possessed by this dead Portuguese harpooner's personality.
I've heard of such possessions, Batman. They're walking along the beach. In the next panel, which is the first panel of page 7, we can see the lighthouse in the background. Cliff's very nicely rendered. Barry's saying, "But happening to someone like you, sacking policemen is not exactly your thing."
All I can figure is, returning here to my parents' old summer home after all these years has upset me emotionally. But I'm not sure.
The next panel, they're arriving back at the old Wayne summer house. We can see it at the top of the cliff as they clamber over some rocks. Batman is saying,
"But what about you? What brought you here?"
"Well, I was doing my thing as Barry Allen, police scientist, when my lab instruments began picking up certain strange vibratory signals." And this is when the listeners might start to think that things are getting maybe a little less tenuous than they were thinking. Next couple of panels are rippled in a flashback style as Barry narrates, "When I ran some tests on those signals, they made no sense. And I very moodily let Barry is operating some scientific equipment and thinking, they're like nothing I've seen before. Cosmic or infrared rays or even seismic tremors can't be causing them. I ran the test figures through the computer, and the resulting printout curled my hair." And we see Barry dealing with the printout, reading it as it spews out of the machine, and he thinks, "Good blazes! They're probe rays from another dimension, a world beyond our own." And we're back in the present with Barry and Bats, as Barry points up towards the Wayne summer house and says, "I then plotted those probes, and they all converged at the same spot. This island. This house. I came here at once, never dreaming you owned it."
Amazing. Do you know where this dimension is, or who or what is sending the probes?
"No, but it must be checked out. I took a brief leave of absence from Central City's police force." They step up towards the house in the next panel. Batman says,
"Well, I'm glad you're here. These possessed states have me worried. Do you think there's any connection between them and those dimensional probes?"
"Might be, since this house seems to be the locale of both. One connection we don't want anyone to make. You've got to stay in your Batman costume every minute from now on. Even sleep in it."
You're right. If I suddenly became possessed as Bruce Wayne, these people would know I'm one and the same man.
"Exactly. Now, let's relax and see what tomorrow brings." It's nice seeing Barry in his sort of short-sleeved summer holidays
Casual Barry.
sort of look, isn't it?
It's good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have another slow dissolve caption for panel 4 of page 8.
"But that night, strange dreams again invade the mind of the old house's owner."
Yes, we see Batman with his arms stretched in front of him, walking down a flight of stairs, and the spectral figure of his father is beckoning him from an open door, saying, "Bruce, my son, come."
"Yes, Dad."
Caption for the final panel of page 8.
Moments later, in a long-locked basement room...
Yes, Batman has come to his senses. He thinks,
"Dad, he's gone, and I'm awake."
Yeah, Bats thinks that. And as he looks around, we can see it's obviously some kind of laboratory. There's some scientific equipment, some jars, some bottles, some books. Again, covered in these exaggerated cobwebs, which almost make me think Spider-Man's going to pop up in the next panel.
Can you imagine?
I can. I'm imagining it right now. Wouldn't that be amazing? As he looks around, Bats is thinking,
"This room, it's a complete lab. I was never allowed in here as a boy."
in the first panel of page 9, he's gone to one of the books that's laying around. I don't know if it was lying open and he's seen it, or if he's opened it up, but we can see that something's written. And Bats thinks,
"It's Dad's handwriting."
And Batman reads, "Dear God, forgive me. I have opened the door, torn away the veil between the worlds of the living and the dead." Batman gets a dramatic close-up for panel 2, which is captioned,
"And as the pages reveal their long-hidden meanings..."
and he thinks,
"Incredible. This proves Dad experimented in returning to life after death."
Panel 3 is a nice moody shot of the Wayne summer house at night. Clouds scudding across another full moon. So take a drink for the full moon, take a drink for scudding. From inside, Batman's thoughts.
He was working on a method for doing just that. In fact, had set things up for such a return just before he was killed. Fantastic! What a dense fool I've been. These strange dreams, old Manuel possessing me. They can only mean one thing.
And he looks very panicked and considered in this panel 4 image here, as he's obviously drawing a very scary conclusion.
Dad and Mom are trying to come back now, trying to communicate with me.
In the next panel, Batman has exited the laboratory, he has the book under his arm. He's putting a chain and padlock at the door, as he thinks.
Old Manuel's the key. Somehow his spirits managed to cross over, and is preparing the way for my parents to follow. I must make sure he isn't thwarted by anyone or anything.
A slow dissolve.
Shortly,
We see Batman setting the urn down on a table in front of an open window. Lots of Spider-Man webs all over the place, as you'd expect. And Batman is thinking,
Dad, Mom, I understand now. I want to meet you, talk to you again too. Now that I know you haven't really died, that these ashes aren't your final form.
first panel of page 10. It's the next morning, obviously. Caption says,
So, as the great Batman succumbs to the deepest of human urges, to meet again long-lost loved ones, he confides in his friend Barry Allen.
over breakfast coffee, Barry is saying, Bruce, I understand your desire to contact your dead parents, but what if it should fail or backfire somehow?
What have I to lose, Barry? I lost so much as a child, growing up alone. This is my chance to wash away those empty years.
Batman heads out over the beach. The next panel, Barry stands at the door watching him go and thinks, poor guy. Under that tough superhero hide is a sensitive, lonely man. But I have a hunch he's playing with fire. That this all connects with that mysterious dimension. Got to watch him.
That afternoon,
Batman sat at a big desk in a big chair, looking through the big book again, and he's thinking,
according to Dad's notebook, there's something as Manuel I must do at the lighthouse. But it's not clear. Just have to wait till the old harpooner possesses me again.
yeah, that's the spirit, Batman. Caption for panel 5 of page 10.
Darkness comes, and with it, another bizarre takeover of the Man of Night, and shortly, down the beach.
Yes, Batman appears to be back at the lighthouse. There's a member of the local constabulary stood outside. Batman is marched up behind him and with a walk strikes him, knocking him over, knocking his hat off. And Batman, well, the possessed Batman says,
Oh, so they put guard here to stop Manuel.
interesting. We cut back in the final panel of page 10, back to, well, the caption tells us where we are.
While in the Wayne house, a guest awakes.
Barry Allen in a stunning golden, twisty-coloured, patterned dressing gown, standing at the desk. We can see the urn with the ashes of the Waynes in front of him, and he thinks, Batman's bed hasn't been slept in, and he's nowhere around. First panel of page 11, caption says,
Now from a special ring, a familiar crimson costume spurts, expanding instantaneously.
I'll bet I know where he is and why. Old Manuel's possessed him again, but first, I better become possessed myself. Of the Flash. Sure enough, the costume enlarges. Barry gets dressed. The caption for panel 2.
The night's ghostly grey is streaked with a crimson blur as Barry Allen takes off after his friend.
Yep, great panel was, I might put this sequence in the socials actually. Barry arrives at the lighthouse and goes racing up the circular staircase thinking, police guard KO'd. I was afraid of this. He's obviously seen the body outside. The caption for panel 3.
And as he reaches the lighthouse top in half a heartbeat,
He arrives, but the possessed Batman spots him arriving and says,
You interrupt Manuel, I fix you.
yes, we see actually that Bats has a wrench in his hand. He's obviously trying to interfere with the lamp. This is what he seems to keep trying to do. Panel 4, the Flash zooms up to Batman thinking, got to pull this or I'd kill him. Yeah, obviously meaning to pull his punch. There's a patow sound effect as Batman goes flying and lets go of the wrench. The caption for the next panel.
Then another scarlet blur bearing a limp body rapidly away.
That's what we see. The Flash accelerating away from the lighthouse with Batman over his shoulder.
Very shortly,
Yes. Barry, back in his civilian clothes, standing with Constable Todd. Batman is stretched out on a bed. Amusingly, the covers are up over his chest. He's in full costume. Barry's saying, as you see, Constable, Batman's asleep.
Guess he couldn't have got back so fast. Must have been pranksters or vandals attacked that lighthouse guard.
Slow dissolve.
But the next morning,
Barry and Bats are standing back again at that big desk with the urn on it and the journal that Batman's been looking at. Barry's saying, Bruce, I can't keep covering you if you continue to break the law during these weird states.
sorry Barry, but I've no control over what I do when I'm old Manuel.
Batman crosses to the wall safe that's behind the painting. The next panel, he's putting the urn away as he's saying,
I only know I must do what I have to if I'm to see my parents again. Think of the stakes. Bringing them back.
Sure, I'm thinking of my friend Bruce Wayne, the Batman, becoming an obsessed fanatic and tempting fate with who knows what dangerous consequences.
Stop it, Barry. I'm sure Dad's experiment won't backfire. Now, please let me study his notebook.
Barry takes his leave in the next panel, leaving Bats behind. As Barry closes the door, he thinks, I can't reach him, yet I must try to avert any trouble. Those dimensional probes focus on this house. Something must be gathering the enormous energy involved. Some special object. As the Flash, I can search the place without Bruce getting the wiser. Once again, Barry presses his costume ring for the second time in 2 pages and releases his costume, which expands on contact with the air. I can't think I've ever seen the Flash costume change happening so quickly, one after the other like that before, ever. Can you?
Not given the full ring thing, not offhand, no.
It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, obviously a fair bit of time has passed in the narrative, like, night till morning, but it's fascinating. Just like, you look in one panel, and then over page, across the other side, there it is again. So, we turn the page to page 13, which is captioned.
Now in instant, the Crimson Cannonball covers every nook and cranny of the old house.
Yep, Batman is sat at the desk reading as the Flash zooms around him, looking into things and looking behind things and checking things out. And then the Flash gets a nice close-up in the second panel of page 13 as he thinks, Nothing that could conceivably concentrate that dimension-bridging energy. Yet it must be here, somewhere. And in panel 3, Flash is creeping down a staircase, very familiar door with lots of Spider-Man webbing, lying all over the place, and he thinks, The door! My calculations showed the probe rays focused through it. Maybe I can use it to unlock the whole incredible problem. No pun intended.
What does the Monarch of Motion mean? The next second...
Yes, amusingly, Flash has zoomed in and gathered Batman up from his reading chair. Batman cries,
Flash, what?
Hang on. We're taking a trip that will really be a mind-blower.
You're mad!
And as they zoom towards the door, as they obviously are clearly starting to vibrate, the Flash replies, Don't worry, my costume's aura will protect you. And in the first panel of page 14, Batman says,
Through the door?
Yes, as they grow transparent as they start to vibrate faster, and the Flash replies, Check, I'm getting up the right vibratory velocity to take us right through it, and hopefully into another world. As we see over a sequence of 3 panels, they zoom through what looks like the front door of the house, actually, and pass outside, dissolving into just a blue and red blur. There's a caption for the large panel that rounds out page 14.
What happens now to our 2 travellers cannot be described, as they transcend the very laws of time and space. And then...
Yeah, and the only word for it, translucent, jelly, wobbly-looking Flash, still carrying Batman. They appear in a very strange bluey-green landscape. There's sort of pillars in the background, sort of Roman Greco pillars that look sort of ruined. They appear to still be on a beach, green clouds in the sky. First panel of page 15, Batman is now standing. They look around, there's yellow clouds hovering behind them. Batman says,
Where are we? What forsaken place have you brought me to? And why?
Unless I miscalculated, this is the dimension that is trying to contact ours. Perhaps the same world your dead parents dwell in. We pull back to a wider shot in panel 2, and there's some very creepy looking, it must be said, translucent ghostly figures now who they appear to be dressed very oddly. One man wearing a bit of a smock who looks almost skeletal with hollow eyes, another guy wearing furs with a long moustache, another figure behind him with a hat, a long beard. You can see it looks like a woman behind, and then standing up in the rocks all around them we can see some other shapes. Batman is looking around and he says,
Those figures, everywhere.
Listen, says the Flash, this way.
Like the ghost of Virgil showing the poet Dante the underworld, the Flash leads the masked manhunter toward the sound of a sibilant voice.
And it looks as though all these translucent ghostly figures are all assembling, all gathering in fact, because standing up in the rocks above them, wow, it's a ghostly pirate-looking figure. His right leg is artificial, strapped on, old stumpy wooden leg. He's wearing a striped t-shirt, he's a long moustache, hair tied back, a little pleated ponytail, big hoop earring. We can see Batman and Flash standing on the ground amongst dozens of these spectral figures with this weird landscape, and this ghostly figure is crying,
My comrades, our sins we did in life have locked the door to the land of eternal rest, and we are trapped in this valley of limbo where there is no peace. But despair not. Even now our servant the Batman works to free us, to send us back to new life in new bodies, in the old world we all miss so much.
First panel of page 16, Batman and Flash are looking up at this guy who's just been monologuing. Batman points and says,
There, that figure, it must be.
Manuel, the Portuguese, of course. When he's not possessing you in our world, his spirit's here in this world. He alone seems to have the power to cross over. The island people say he practiced devilish rites when alive.
Over there! Those other two! My parents!
Caption for panel 3 of page 16 says,
As the Batman strains toward two hauntingly familiar figures...
we see the ghostly silhouetted forms of Thomas and Martha Wayne. Batman says,
Dad! Mother! It's me! Bruce! Your son! Please, speak to me! Their faces... so sad.
He reaches for them in the next panel, but the Flash reaches forward too, grabs his arm to restrain him as Batman says,
Let me go! Let me embrace them! Touch them!
Listen, they can't see or hear us. Stop fighting me. The vibration time phase is ending. If we break contact, you'd be trapped here forever.
No sooner has the Flash spoken than again there is the indescribable transcending of time and space. And...
Yep, and we see Batman and Flash vibrating back through the door of the summer house with the Flash saying, We're back! Thank God! A tiny caption says, continued on the second page following. Past a full page of advertisements, which includes an advertisement for sea monkeys. Is that the first sea monkeys advert?
I think we've had it. It's been mentioned before, but it might not be a big one.
I'm not sure. That's the first one that's certainly registered with me. That's interesting. Listeners, we're going to start a new one. Take a drink whenever there's a sea monkeys advert.
Why not? But don't take a drink of sea monkeys.
No.
Right.
First panel of page 17, Batman and the Flash are on the floor of the Wayne summer houses. They've returned from that other dimension. The Flash is saying, Now we know the terrible truth. A multitude of dead souls waiting to re-enter our world and possess living bodies. You must give up your plans. The next panel, Batman has opened the door back into that study. We can see the journal lying on the desk as he says in reply,
Give up freeing my parents' poor unhappy spirits from that hellish place? No, Flash. I'm sure Dad's experiment will work and bring only them back as they were in life, as themselves. And I will bring them back. The next time Old Man Well possesses me, I swear it.
Flash looks askance at Batman as he thinks, Blast! Entering that dead dimension didn't discourage him. He's more determined than ever to fulfill this dangerous destiny. In the next panel, Flash takes his leave from the summer house. We see him zooming down the cliff and along the beach, thinking, his next possession could come at any moment. I haven't much time, but there's one hunch left to play.
Miles melts to nothingness under the Flash's flying feet, and in moments...
Yeah, we see the Flash arriving somewhere. Very old-fashioned look to the place. Looks like is that Cobbled Street? Those buildings behind him look very old-fashioned as he thinks. Bruce was a kid when his parents died. Caleb Bronson, a family friend, made the funeral arrangements. We see Barry Allen emerging in the final panel of page 17. He's also taken off his uniform and thinking, Bruce said Bronson lives here in Boston, if he's still alive. As Dr. Wayne's closest friend, he might know something about the experiments. Pity the guy's not called Boston Brand. That would have been handy, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So we arrive at the top of page 18. Caption for the first panel there says,
After some swift sleuthing...
Yes, we see Barry approaching a large building, which very helpfully is a sign outside that says,
Elysium Rest Home.
Yeah, Barry walks up the long drive thinking, I'm in luck. Bronson's alive. Retired in this rest home. If he can just tell me what's gathering the dimension-bridging energy and where it is. We're inside the establishment in the next panel, and a balding, bespectacled doctor points towards someone and says to Barry, That's Bronson, Mr. Allen, but he had a stroke. He can't move or speak. Barry says, Oh no, could I have a moment alone with him?
In the dimness, the old man stares blankly as Barry Allen speaks softly but persistently.
Old man, thick white hair, green dressing gown. Sat there, we can see his bed and his dressing table behind him. Barry's thinking, no use. I explained everything to him. I can tell he hears me, but even if he knows anything, how can he communicate it?
Then a withered claw of a hand feebly struggles to move.
Fingers start to move as Barry thinks, he's scratching something on the arm of his wheelchair.
Meanwhile, miles away, in a sad and crumbling house...
Batman's standing before a large window watching the sunset. Beautiful sunset. Take a drink every time there's a sunset, listeners. Bats is thinking,
They doubled the lighthouse guard, so when Old Man Well possesses me again, I'll really have to be on the ball. Tonight is the time I must bridge the gap between the worlds.
Oh, why couldn't he have said between the two worlds?
Yeah, oh well.
Caption for the next panel.
So it is that a brooding Batman waits for the visitor he knows must come, and, as night falls...
Yes, the full moon in the background. Batman is marching across the beach. There's that slight emphasis to his leg movements, which makes me think he's maybe been possessed again. We arrive at the top of page 19.
Soon, where scudding clouds obscure the moon, and nervous men stand guard...
Soon where scudding clouds obscure the moon, and nervous men stand guard. Yep, Bats fires a bat line up onto the lighthouse and swings up, clambers up the side, giving me flashbacks to the legendary Doctor Who story, The Horror of Fang Rock, which I remember from first transmission. Panel 3, Batman vaults over the guard barrier to arrive at the top of the lighthouse. The caption says,
Shortly, like the winged mammal whose name he bears, the possessed Batman soon soars to the top. And enters.
Yeah, a bit of unnecessary duplication here, listeners, I apologise. Caption then for panel 4.
A few minutes later, he exits. But suddenly, as the clouds part...
Yeah, Batman starts to swing down, but, well, he's helpfully silhouetted against a large lunar body. Take a drink as one of the policemen down on the ground cocks his pistol and cries,
Up there, against the moon! Shoot!
And in the next panel, there's some vips and pyows as Batman hits the ground and the police fire on him. The caption of the final panel of page 19.
And then the bizarre stiff-legged figure vanishes into the night.
Yeah, interesting. While Bats is possessed, he still has his acrobatic abilities. Yes, there's some more beeps and zings as Batman lurches off with his cape billowing out massively behind him. Gosh. Caption for the first panel on page 20.
Not long after, as a scarlet blur once more streaks over the beach...
Barry's going full tilt. He always lays a bag over his arm. He's rushing along the beach, but there seems to be a bit of a kerfuffle, a bit of a hubbub in front of him. A crowd of people. Barry thinks, maybe now I have the answer. What's that ahead? Torches? Yeah, and sure enough, it's like an angry mob with flaming torches. He ducks behind some rocks in panel 2 and thinks, the police and some villagers. And we see what looks like Constable Todd saying to another senior officer,
It was that crazy Batman, all right, Chief. He got into the lighthouse, then escaped using old Manuel's funny gate.
Old Manuel's funny gate, that sounds like a specialist kind of whiskey or lager or something, doesn't it?
It does. It's something you'd buy in the West End.
Yes, or perhaps when you went to see menswear in the 90s.
Mm.
The next panel's cracking. It's a bunch of angry villagers with Constable Todd in the background. The first guy at the front is raging and then he cries, It's time this madman was stopped, terrorising the whole island.
No telling what he might do, possessed the way he is of that dead devil, the Portuguese.
And Constable Todd says,
Start searching, we'll find him.
And the Flash, cracking shot of the Flash's backside here actually, as he watches the crowd move off and he thinks, good blazes, they're really riled up. Out for Batman's blood, I've got to find him first.
Suddenly, the night is torn apart by a great stabbing beam.
Yeah, the Flash reacts as he thinks, the lighthouse, it's working, but it hasn't for years. And sure enough, massive, piercing light coming from the lighthouse. And then the caption for the first panel on page 21.
And where the incandescent circle of light strikes the rolling waves...
Yes, we see the ghostly, yellow-tinted forms of bodies emerging from the water. At the head of them, familiar with the stripy shirt and wooden leg, is Manuel. Very creepy. Flash observes in the next panel thinking, good Lord, it's them. The spirits from the dead world. They're moving toward the house. Must get there at once. Sure enough, we see the Wayne Summer house on top of the cliffs and all the ghostly figures emerging from the water and walking towards it. The caption for panel 3.
While inside the darkened Wayne home, a once again normal Batman stares at a familiar portrait.
In the foreground of the panel, we can see the urn back on the desk. Batman is looking up at the portrait of his father and he's thinking,
Well, Dad, I did everything to make your return possible. Now I wait to embrace you and Mother after all these long, empty years.
The next panel, suddenly...
Flash!
Yes, the Flash has vibrated through the wall, still bearing the little bag he had on the previous page, and he says to Batman, You did it! Release the dead! A whole multitude of them is approaching the house!
No, only my parents will be brought back.
It didn't work that way. I know why, as Manuel, you kept going to the lighthouse, to fix it. The beam's power was needed to draw the spirit beings from the sea. Tiny caption says, continued in 4th page following. Pass an advertisement for a Superman poster, some other stuff. Ooh, an advertisement for a 100-page issue of Superman, the one with Airwave and Kid Eternity and Super Chief, if you're paying attention, and a large issue of Strange Adventures. We arrive, the first panel of page 22, Batman and Flash standing next to the large window as Batman says,
You're lying! All along you thought my wish to be reunited with my parents was wrong.
Lying, am I? Then look. Look for yourself. If you dare. Batman pulls the curtain back and looks outside.
Good God! It is true, and they're almost here.
It's his head in his hands in the next panel. Batman continues.
What have I done?
Nothing that can be undone. And I think I know how. Then there's a... From the door, Flash points and says, "Listen, they're here. Don't open the door. If you do, we're lost." The next panel, we're outside the house. The ghostly spirits are wandering through the fog towards the house, knocking on the door. There's a strange luminance coming from inside as the Flash cries, "Batman, what's happening to you?" We're back inside. Batman, rather light on the cover. The left side of his face is starting to distort. He's surrounded by a golden aura as he cries,
"Flash, stop me! Kill me if necessary before I open that door!"
The knocking continues. Batman says,
"No, don't believe that. I won't open it."
The knocking continues in the first panel of page 23. The Flash, panicked, horrified close-up, thinks, he's possessed again, but this time he's fighting back to keep it from taking over. Two identities warring inside of him. But one identity speaks with old Manuel's voice and can't be trusted. The Flash turns towards the desk at this point, reaching for the urn, and he thinks, the urn, I must destroy it. And Batman is obviously conflicted in the background. It's almost in a way like there's two Batmen struggling for dominance. Batman says,
"Do what you must do, Flash."
And then he says,
"Touch my parents' sacred ashes, never."
Suddenly Batman has a candlestick in his hand in panel 3 with a wonk. He brings it down the back of the Flash's head. Caption for panel 4.
Then, as the Scarlet Speedster slumps to the floor,
the knocking continues. Batman moves towards the door. Flash's head is spinning and he thinks, old Manuel's identity is one. He's going to open the door. I'm groggy, but I must do something.
Desperately, the man who can cover miles in instants tries to stretch a few all-important inches, and
he's successful in knocking the urn of ashes off of the desk. There's a smash as the urn breaks on the floor. The knocking continues as Flash reaches for the debris, thinking, an ancient Egyptian ankh, the symbol of life, carved from a black diamond. That's it. The thing concentrating the dimensional energy. And we can see that he's reaching. Actually, it's not an ankh, not one that I recognise, and I've got an ankh tattooed on my back. What we're actually seeing Barry reach for is like a kind of statue of a figure, a figurine of a woman, almost with wings draping from her hands. Not very clear what's going on there. The first panel of page 24 is captioned,
as the knocking reaches a persistent crescendo, a gauntleted hand reaches for a well-worn handle.
As the knocking continues, see Batman's hand reaching for the door handle. Then in panel 2, the Flash is thinking, hope I've got enough strength to give this thing a super speed lift-off. And we see him hurling the small statue figure that he found inside the urn. There's a smash as it hurtles through the glass. And then a caption for panel 3.
The next instant, like some tiny meteorite in reverse, the black artifact leaves Earth forever for the stars.
Yes! We see the black figurine exiting the Earth and hurtling into space with some stars twinkling in the background. Gosh, who knew that the Flash had such abilities? Caption for panel 4.
While below...
Batman is standing outside the house. The ghostly figures have vanished. All clear, as Batman says.
Dad! Mother! No one at all.
And he thinks,
my head feels like I just awakened from a nightmare.
Back inside the house in the next panel, he notices the urn is broken. He also notices what the urn contained.
Sand? The urn contained sand?
Yes, sand. And the ankh, which once gone, broke the energy link between the two worlds and old Manuel's possession of you.
How close to disaster I came. Forgive me, Flash, and thanks.
Thank old Caleb Branson. He gave me the vital clue, scratching the message that the ankh was hidden in the urn so it would remain undisturbed. Batman looks up at the portrait of his father on the first panel of page 25 and he says,
Of course. Dad knew even I'd never open what I believed contained my own parents' remains.
But he couldn't know the experiment would go awry. Batman looks out the window at a full moon in the next panel saying,
Where are my parents now? Still trapped in that awful dimension? And why?
Perhaps because your father dared to tamper with what must remain separate, the living and dead worlds.
I don't even have their ashes. No.
We see the Flash has opened the bag that he's been carrying. A familiar object in his hand. He offers it to Batman, saying, "Yes, you do. Caleb Branson also clued me to a vault in Boston where I found this replica of the other urn containing the real ashes."
Thank you, Flash. Once more.
And a slow dissolve. Caption for panel 4, page 25.
And later, as an exhausted man sleeps.
Yeah. Two silhouetted figures, almost spotlighted, standing behind Bruce Wayne, again his costume draped over the chair. One's a man, one's a woman. The man says, "Bruce, our son, it's over. We failed to return to your world by destroying the Ankh-Freeders from the netherworld. We've reached the land of eternal peace. At last." Another slow dissolve.
Time is merciful. The night's darkness only lasts until a new day's dawning.
Barry Allen and Batman. Batman is locking the door of the summer house, as Barry says. "The local authorities went along with my escorting you off the island to seek psychiatric help."
That's only half a lie, Barry. I really could use a head shrinker after this vacation.
In the final panel, Batman points up to the old summer house, saying,
But seriously, I've also found peace at last. I'm no longer haunted by my orphaned childhood. Killing my past by finally putting the ghosts of my parents to rest has freed me.
and he waves. Barry looks on as Batman says,
Goodbye, Dad, Mom. Goodbye, house.
and a small caption tells us this is...
The end.
Well then. So, just let's take that first panel first of all. Killing my past by finally putting the ghosts of my parents to rest has freed me. So that's actually the last time that he was ever Batman. Stops being Batman as a
There you
result. The end.
They had to cancel all their big plans for Brave and Bold 100.
Yep. Batman finished in 1971.
And there we are. Everything else that's been written since has just been fanfic.
Yeah. Well, a little bit less tenuous than Flash 209.
Mm-hmm.
This other dimension that they were visiting, this ghostly thing. I mean, I was reminded obviously of Flash 176 with death floating about and all that sort of stuff.
Flash has got prior on this. Yes.
Yeah. It's very interesting. All the metaphysical stuff about Bruce's parents and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact they were sort of almost in the thrall of Manuel's plans, etc.
Yeah.
Pawns in his game. And I was actually in a way reminded of the movie The Fog by John Carpenter.
Yes, I can see that.
The final climatic scenes is all the everyone started towards the house. And,
yep, definitely. This predates that, obviously.
Yeah, but I wonder, did John Carpenter read B&B 99 discuss?
Possibly.
And, did we really see what happened to the village mob with their torches? Where did they all go? Where did they all march off to after Barry saw them?
There's so much to unpack from this story.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Right, I'll let you go then.
Okay. So I don't know about you, but I was fascinated at the fact that Thomas Wayne turns out to be a secret Lovecraft character.
Yes.
Yeah, it was very bizarre. It was very, gothic house on the caves on the islands, it's, and doing this secret research into the afterlife. It's pure Lovecraft. It's really bizarre. And also something we have never heard of before, and I don't think we ever hear of it again. I found that fascinating. That was great. There was a couple other bits. You mentioned the Ankh. Basically, it definitely was not an Ankh. I think Bob Brown didn't know what an Ankh was.
Yes, I was reminded of the Minotaur, close inverted commas, that we got in Just League of America issue 89 before Christmas there.
That was a satyr, really.
That was basically someone told
Centaur
him
satyr.
It was half man and half bull.
Yeah.
And that's essentially
got
what
the
he drew.
mixed up.
Yeah.
That was funny. The fact it was carved out of black diamonds made me think, oh, Eclipso. I suddenly had that notion.
Right.
It was like, oh, right, okay, there's no connection there. I'm obviously drawing too much into this. Unless it is the same type of black diamond that Eclipso's diamond is and has mystical properties, which would make sense in DC Comics. So the whole opening panels of Batman on the ferry with the Batmobile crossing the river or the water to get to the island.
Yeah, I mean, that's
hilarious.
bizarre. Like, he could have just gone as Bruce Wayne.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then it would have been Bruce Wayne, it was getting possessed and all that. But I mean, we're so used to these days Batman being that creature of the night.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The fact that he's just blatantly going to, Long Island or New Jersey or wherever it was, New England, I'm not really sure, or Maine, or I don't mind my American geography again. Sorry, Steve. That's bizarre. Public Batman.
I've always enjoyed that about the Reading Bold stories because he is almost like a detective / glorified policeman almost. He's more like a person. He's more human than the mythical creature of the night, which we are used to seeing. I wish he'd brought Alfred along with him to deal with all those cobwebs, though.
Well, maybe Spider-Man should have just tidied up after himself.
They're supposed to dissolve after an hour.
Well,
I mean, really,
that's true.
You know,
Maybe that means it wasn't Spider-Man. One thing I noticed very quickly, page 13, panel 3, that's John Wesley's ship. So it is.
See, hang on, I'm just sniffing back. Oh, yes, I see what you mean,
It's weird, isn't
a
it?
bit muscular, and the mask is a bit more almost three-dimensional. Yeah, the cowl, yeah, I can totally see that,
Good.
Interesting, yes.
Anyway, did this comic give them the idea for getting John Wesley's ship to play the Flash?
May well have done.
Anyway.
So, there's a few things we need to talk about here.
There are more than a few.
The big elephant in the room is, what Earth does this story take place on? Now, we're both pretty much anti-Earth B theory.
Yes.
Where all the Bob Haney Brave and Bold stories are allocated their own Earth called Earth B, because that's just quite lazy and they can generally be explained.
Mm-hmm.
However, this one gives us a bit of a poser because it's firmly established in several other comics that predate this and also come after this that Bruce Wayne's parents weren't cremated, they were buried.
Yes, of course.
And there's scenes with them at the gravesite. I've got a few of them that I've found, so I'll actually post them in the Facebook album for this episode, so please check that out. So it can't really be Earth 1 unless, and I've thought of one way out of this,
right?
Unless that's more of a memorial gravestone.
Okay.
And their ashes are actually elsewhere.
Right.
That's a huge stretch.
Yes.
But it's not impossible.
It kind of makes, it's kind of the only one that maybe really makes sense with all this sort of contextual stuff.
Because I don't think I've ever seen a story where, as morbid as this is, the corpses of the Wayne parents, at least pre-Crisis, have been unearthed. I think it has happened post-Crisis, but before Crisis Infinite Earths, this is Earth 1 we're talking about here. I don't remember any story where that happened. Yeah,
I can picture in my head, without really knowing any specifics, I can think of several times when Batman or Bruce Wayne has stood in front of gravestones looking pained and upset, and it's this whole Haney don't care thing that you've said in the past, isn't it?
It's very dense, Haney, this one.
Yeah.
There's a lot happening. There's a lot of really tough dialogue and captions to go through for us to say.
I mean, his priority is obvious at all times, just telling the best story possible right there and right now, which is fine. It's like when you try and start reconciling it with anything else whatsoever, it kind of just, is it worth the trouble? Yes, of course it is.
That's half the fun.
But you're right. I mean, that's a massive sort of question mark to ask.
I mean, I don't think it's impossible, but it is a huge stretch.
I can imagine this one in Mark Waid's big DC Multiverse Compendium publication, either in the one at the back of the Crisis Absolute or in that recent thing. I can imagine this being given an author of its own. Because
Earth 99,
this whole spirits of the dead standing over the living thing is very unusual.
Yeah.
It's more House of Mystery, House of Secrets.
Yeah.
It's more Sandman again than Batman, really.
Yeah,
which at this point is like, the height of the Dark Knight Detective sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it does, as we said, echo Flash 176 in some ways. I'm glad that Flash 176 exists.
Yeah.
Because it makes this story a little bit more palatable as a result. You know what I mean?
Sure. One aspect I really did like is the fact that neither of them were doing a whole Dr. 13 being really cynical of the situation.
Sure.
And both of them embraced the fact that there are such things as spirits or ghosts who can come back after the dead, and there is another dimension perhaps where these spirits could reside, because obviously they've experienced similar things in their own histories. Like obviously Batman's met Deadman, Flash has had that death experience that you've already mentioned. They've had other more bizarre encounters with magical creatures and stuff within the pages of the Justice League in the past. So I
mean, you're right, actually, that's a point, because it does kind of fit in with some of the, I mean, we made a Boston brand joke at one point, obviously, when the Flash went to Boston.
Yeah.
You're right, it does fall into that old Phantom Stranger, Deadman corner of things. It's a shame the Phantom Stranger wasn't in this story too.
Might have cleaned things up a bit easier.
That might have been, I can imagine him adding a lot of weight to it. And I mean, 25 pages is one of the longest stories we've done, but it didn't feel like a drag. It didn't feel like it was taking us a long time to get through it. Some brilliant artwork, like the panels of the Flash and Batman vibrating through the door and into the other dimension, the layout of the house, the stuff with the lighthouse. I mean, it was very atmospheric. It would be a good Halloween comic.
Very much so, yes.
To read, I think, I say it was published in October, so maybe that's what they had in mind.
Ah, okay, yes.
October the 7th, 1971. So, nights would have been drawing in.
Indeed,
it's quite,
yes.
And the New England setting, does tie into that sort of slight
Stephen
King
King-ish,
vibe.
yes,
Jinx, you owe me a Fanta. Yeah.
How long do full moons last, by the way? I thought it was only 3 nights, because they've been here for at least 4, and it's a full moon every single night.
Maybe that's a side effect of the other dimensions sort of affecting things, maybe.
Could be. My goodness. But I found that hilarious.
Yeah.
I love the idea of Batman renting the Wayne holiday home.
Yes, that's bizarre.
As they seem to think. And also, he doesn't carry money.
I know, that also is odd. You think you'd have a little pouch in the utility belt, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's the famous scene in the Batman and Robin 1997 movie where Batman whips out his back credit card.
So he does.
Yes.
I blanked that from my mind. Do you know what? I liked that movie.
I hated it when I first saw it. I happened to catch it on television one time and watched it, and then it clicked. It's not supposed to be a serious Batman movie at all. It's supposed
not.
It's supposed to be a 90s remake of the 60s TV show, and as soon as that clicked for me, I loved the hell
Yeah,
out of it.
it's funny, 'cause I remember thinking Batman Forever seemed to be a kind of hybrid of what Burton had already been doing and the TV show and the vibe of the comics at the time.
Yeah.
Because I was still half reading Batman, because it wasn't too long after the brief period when Dick Grayson was being Batman.
Yeah.
I'd been reading Nightfall and all that stuff, so it kind of felt very consistent, and arguably Batman and Robin is maybe a step too far. I mean, Eyes to Meet You, complete waste of Bane and all that sort of stuff, but Batgirl, Chris O'Donnell was really good as Robin, there's no two ways about it. Clooney was fine, you know, it was Coolio's in it, for crying out loud.
Is he?
Rest in peace.
Coolio.
No, come on.
Okay.
He was a legend.
Sure.
So yeah, this is the Batman and Robin discussion podcast. All of a
We
sudden,
should do that as a special.
no, we shouldn't. How did we get onto that? We totally got on a tangent. Oh well.
One other thing I liked about Batman and Robin.
I don't know. Definitely. I have no idea. You tell me.
Listeners, how did we go into that topic?
Tell us.
Money. Didn't carry money.
That's it. Yeah,
Yes.
the credit card. That's right. It's the car. Chicks dig the car.
Even the fact he was arrested and brought in front of a judge is hilarious. It's like all the villagers were out to get Batman.
Yeah, and he would have been unmasked. There's no way they wouldn't have just let... Yeah, it's one of these ones where you just have to kind of go with it, really. An awful lot to really process from this one.
Yeah.
I just thought of the most terrible pun. Batman and Flash might have said, as the ghostly figures, encouraged by Manuel, approached the house, led by Batman's parents, the Flash might have said that he had turned the Waynes against him.
Yeah.
Jinx. I think Peter saw where I was going with that.
Oh, yes. That is a reference to Scottish...
No, don't explain it.
No,
don't explain it.
I will. Okay.
That's a Lemmy Show joke. So
Yes.
if you're not from West Central Scotland and watched BBC Scotland the last 10, 15 years or whatever, you might not have got that one. But I make no apologies, because some of our listeners are from West Central Scotland and it might make them laugh.
I'm sure it's on YouTube, but if you look for the word Wayne, W-E-A-N-S...
Yeah, we might post a link, actually.
Yeah, good point.
Just with Anyway, maybe we won't. Right, anything else, or should we see if there's any contemporary correspondence? Because I'm aware that this is going to be a long one.
I don't understand why the police were guarding this lighthouse anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's an abandoned lighthouse. It was kind of locked up.
Maybe there was government secrets hidden inside it or something.
Maybe they knew it was a gateway to another dimension. Maybe that's it.
Interesting.
Maybe that Captain Josiah, or whatever his name was, maybe he was the guardian of this ancient doorway and it had to stay sealed. That would have been quite interesting. But, but Bob Haney's like, nope, he's served his purpose, moving on with the story. Let's stick with the Lovecraft stuff.
Yeah.
It's great.
We've done quite a few Brave and the Bolds recently, Plastic Man, Sergeant Rock, Wildcat, this one, The Flash. They've all been very different. Again, the point I made previously, Batman Out of Gotham.
Yeah.
Batman's Tour of the World. They've all been very different. They've all been very interesting. They've all required a lot of work.
Yes.
I don't think you could ever accuse Bob Haney of phoning it in.
No, definitely not. They're always very exciting stories. They might not always make the most sense, but there's always something really entertaining about them. And if you think about it hard enough, you can make it work.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why Brave and Bold was like the highest selling Batman comic, because it was sheer entertainment. It wasn't designed to be anything else.
One final thing, to go back to that beautiful Neil Adams cover, there isn't a bit when the Flash pulls a gun on bats.
Nope, there is no gun involved in this situation.
There is a nice bit when Batman's face twists slightly.
But again, it's not like it is in the
Flash
cover.
doesn't pull a gun. So yeah, that's another Brave and the Bold cover that lies to you. I'll have to watch out for that in future issues of Brave and the Bold if there's any scenes that actually... Anyway.
One last thing I do want to mention.
Oh yes,
is
one last thing.
Columbo style. Is I loved Barry wearing Bruce's clothes casually in the mansion where he's basically got the evening smoking jacket on. I found that.
Oh, he borrowed
hilarious.
this, right? Yes, he borrowed the dressing gown and pyjamas.
Loved that. I thought
Yeah,
that
that makes sense.
Looked brilliant.
Remember we did the Batman and Wildcat one, and we talked about how smelly Batman would have been going through the desert for 3 days in his
Got to be
costume.
similar here, wouldn't it?
Yeah, he's living and wearing his costume all the time, and sleeping in his costume all the time, and running about by the beach. And
well, it is drip drying, as we know.
Yeah, but it's just like, is it made of unstable molecules? Is it automatically clean and all that sort of stuff?
What would the Earth 1 equivalent be? It's not promethium, possibly.
I used to love unstable molecules, man. Honestly. Anyway, right, is there any contemporary correspondence to look at?
There certainly is. We shall skip ahead to Brave and Bold issue 101. And the first letter says, Dear Editor, all I can say about The Man Who Murdered His Past is that it was a warm, wonderful story. Both Batman and Flash prove they are completely human and function as the perfect team. Bob Haney's technique is brilliant because he makes the reader feel like a participant rather than a spectator. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Which is the attitude of most stories. The art was conventional, but magnificent. He then talks about the Viking Prince, but we didn't cover that. And then finishes by saying, I thank you for making October 14th a memorable 21st birthday. And that's from William G. Lax from Poughkeepsie, New York.
Thank you, William, and we hope to help you celebrate many, many more. Well, that's nice. Editor's response. The next letter covers the recent issue of The Phantom Stranger, but we didn't do that. So the following letter goes like this. Dear Editor, for the first time in a long time, I did not like an issue of B&B. Why?
Gasp.
The plot hit me as a bit too far-fetched, especially the part about Bruce Wayne's parents spending all those years in that limbo world for experimenting with the dead. Yeah, we didn't really talk too much about that, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Wayne's low-key, quiet, as you said, I suppose, Lovecraftian style. That was... Yeah, we should probably just continue to gloss over that. What a complicated figure Thomas Wayne is, was.
Yes.
Maybe the next Flashpoint rip-off, they'll start talking about that. The letter continues, maybe it's my memory playing tricks on me, but haven't we seen stories about Bruce standing before his parents' graves and vowing to fight crime, as Peter said? And that letter's from none other than Bob Rozakis at Elmont, New York.
The answer man himself.
And the editorial response is...
We can't argue with your personal opinion about the story in general, but we will debate your comment about the Wayne's graves. How do you know that they were not cremated and their urns buried? Haney assures us this is not an unpopular custom, and indeed occurred in his own family, except he's given the urn at the end of the story.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we speculated on ourselves.
Yeah.
I cannot think of, what is the point of burying an urn? Good grief. The whole point of cremating someone is that you don't have to bury them and it takes up less space. I'm unsentimental about such things, listeners, I apologise. Well, anyway, yes, but I agree with Peter in the way that he highlighted it, and I do not agree with this fudged way that the editor has replied. There's some more bits and bobs. They highlight issue 182 of Superboy, which is a story in it that we vaguely thought about trying to find the justification for covering it. At one point, there's also a request that Batman teams up with the Legion, but that doesn't happen in Brave and Bold for a very, very long time. So yeah, that's it then for B&B 99. A very interesting story. It was nice to see Barry Allen doing as much as the Flash did.
Yes.
Yes, because he's a policeman and all that sort of stuff.
Using his science and all that.
Using his police skills and all that.
That's quite interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
When I was doing research for this issue, I came across something else, and that was the letters page that covers issue 100. We're not going to talk about issue 100, it's not one we're going to do. However, there's a comment in here from Scott Snyder of Brooklyn, New York.
All right.
And I wonder if that is DC comic writer Scott Snyder or someone related to him, because I think it'd be too long ago to actually be the DC writer Scott Snyder, but I just found it really interesting because it's not the most common of names.
Yeah, a family member perhaps, or another cousin or his dad maybe.
Yeah, certainly he writes in to say that Brave and Bold 100 is one of the finest Brave and Bold stories yet. So there
Interesting.
We are.
Black Canary's in issue 100, but we're not going to do it because, as we said in the past, if we did every single Black Canary story, given the fact she's a JSA member, we'd literally never get this done, and it's already taken us much longer than we thought it would in the first place, but not to worry.
Yeah.
But there are other Brave and the Bold issues with Black Canary, and we're going to decide if we're going to do them or not, basically on an ad hoc basis as we go, aren't we?
Yes.
But we probably will.
But don't worry,
them.
we'll cover all the exciting, entertaining, and pertinent ones.
Yes.
So there we are.
Yes. Well then, shall we wind up?
Let's do that. That's what we thought about the issue. What did you think about this story? What earth do you think it took place on? Let us know. You can email us at theearth2podcast@gmail.com. Make sure you follow us on social media because we're putting up lots of lovely bonus material for this and indeed every episode.
We certainly will.
On Facebook and Instagram, we're at the Earth 2 Podcast, and on Twitter, we're at podcast_Earth2, and it's the number 2 for all of our contacts.
It certainly is. If you're feeling generous, you could go to wherever it is you receive your podcast and give us a nice positive review. That would be lovely. I'm told such things are good for our visibility and our algorithms. We'll give another mention to Brian, the enemy of the show, who's systematically going through our old Instagram posts as he catches up on old episodes and commenting. So, Brian, keep it coming. I'm loving that.
Thank you.
And in the recent episode, we talked about the Father Ted sitcom very briefly, didn't we?
We certainly did, yes.
We communicate via YouTube from our pal Johnny McKinstry.
We certainly did. And he told us that his favourite episode of Father Ted is the one with the rabbits.
Excellent.
It's also my favourite episode of Friends.
I quite like the one of the rabbits as well. Yeah, because it's got that other minister that's terrified of him.
Yeah.
He's sat in his bed surrounded by rabbits. Yes. Johnny, should you and me and Peter start doing a Father Ted's discussion podcast? You have a think. Let Peter know the next time you see him.
Which one of us would be which father?
No, we're not going to reenact it. We're just going to talk about it.
Go on, Ted.
Go on.
On that bombshell.
I've been Father Dougal Maguire.
I've been Father Ted Crilly. And you've been listening to
the Earth 2 podcast.
Transmatter cube activated. Return coordinates set for Earth Prime.
Bruce said Bronson lives here in Boston. Sorry. What a tongue twister that was. Thanks, Bob Haney. That's your outtake.
Yep.
Batgirl Chris O'Dowd was superb as...
Chris O'Dowd? Can you imagine?
I know, I got that wrong.